Peace on Earth. Ethan Indigo Smith here, the Philosopher, stoned. Here we discuss the esoteric and exoteric of all things across the spectrum, metaphysical and political. We leave no stone unturned. All right, so today we're going to discuss the four pards. And I discovered this in researching the Matrix of Four. I've utilized this in many different ways to interpret and learn and find new ideas. The four pards are from Hebrew text, esoteric Hebrew text, and called the Zohar, and this idea PRDS relates to or has the idea behind it that wisdom brings about paradise, and so the four pards, this set of four manners to interpret spiritual lessons, PRDS. Are now associated with paradise, the PRDS, and they're associated with the paradise of comprehension, the paradise of wisdom, right? So uh, the the appropriation for this four pards was for the Old Testament, but it is a great way to pierce the veil and get past the dogma that such institutions representing a testament of one sort or another, or the Dharma or another type of teaching, when they restrict your interpretation, if they restrict your interpretation. Of course, we know that the monotheists always do that, one way or another. Um, but this text, though written by an Old Testament monotheist, explains how to interpret spiritual lessons. And again, I find I utilize this for many different abstracts and concrete realizations because I look for a different way. People have been told that there's one way to interpret lessons, spiritual and otherwise. And this basis, this set of four, is a basis to expand and understand comprehension, leading to paradise of wisdom. So, the four ways to understand theological text and spiritual lessons is first literal, and second allegorical, and third comparative, and fourth is secretive. Fourth is always the secret. Uh, so if you look at, say, any biblical teaching, often enough there is an association with literal understandings of the text. And most people read these texts, even when they're obviously allegorical, as literal and look for the literal. That's the primary. That's the most basic, is when there's aspects of, say, the Bible that are historical and literal, right? But beyond that, the allegory is always present, and most people have some comprehension of that too. Even the most ardent monotheists will point to the story of Jonah in the whale and point to how it's allegorical for X, Y, or Z. So, looking for our own allegory in these different systems, lessons is wonderful. Don't accept their specific allegory that they've held dogmatically, often for a long time. The comparative is, of course, a wonderful concept because we can find integration and unity of humanity, integration of these lessons and unity of humanity where the lessons from diverse groups might be connected. So the comparative can often be associated too with numbers or characters, of course. Uh, so and these the four pards, of course, aren't. It doesn't represent four ways to interpret the things. It represents four pathways of interpretation that could have numerous different and do have numerous different ways to look at these systems. And then there's the secretive. And the secretive has often been secreted because essentially institutions like to be in control. And the secretive, more often than not, breaks down to, elucidates, enumerates the self development of consciousness, the path to wisdom, the path to paradise. So the secretive stuff is different ways, usually not necessarily limited to, but usually different ways to develop your consciousness and or your physical, right? So um, these have been distorted and secreted, so they're hard to often grasp at first. But these four parts are often learned or understood in that level of abstract too. Of course, everyone understands the literal lesson first, right? And then the allegorical, and then the comparative, and then the secretive. Of course, again, streams of lessons. And I find I use this a lot. One of the things I use this to use this lesson to decipher what is old comprehension of a very usually interpreted by way of literal understandings. One of the things I looked at was the Sumerian King's List. Is it allegorical, or if you will, since we're dealing with numbers, is it numerological and symbological through these numbers? Right. I'll leave the link to that article and the link to the Matrix of Four, which has a whole series of sets of four that I've used to better my comprehension and communication and debate and so on, many different things. Peace. Thanks for listening.